The stench of desperation clung to the air like radiation sickness. Nyx Valerian pulled his coat tighter around his shoulders as he descended into the bowels of Cathara Station, where legitimate business gave way to the galaxy's darkest commerce. The mining asteroid's lower levels hummed with illegal activity, but nothing quite as vile as what transpired in the crimson-lit chambers below. He hadn't come here by choice. Credits were running dangerously low, and the fuel cells on the Phantoms Edge wouldn't refill themselves. A simple cargo run had turned into this nightmare when his contact mentioned the special merchandise being sold tonight. Nyx told himself he was only here to gather intelligence, maybe find leverage against the crime syndicates that controlled this sector. The auction hall reeked of smoke and sweat. Buyers from dozens of species clustered around elevated platforms, their eyes gleaming with avarice. Nyx recognized several faces from wanted posters: slavers, organ harvesters, collectors of sentient beings for private menageries. His stomach churned as he found a spot near the back wall. Next lot, announced the auctioneer, a grotesque Threllian whose multiple arms gestured theatrically. Something truly special tonight, gentle beings, the last of her kind. The spotlight illuminated the center stage, and Nyx's breath caught in his throat. She stood defiant, despite the energy shackles binding her wrists, her skin shimmering with an inner light that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. Crystalline formations grew from her temples like a crown, and her eyes held the depth of dying. Stars, even beaten and chained, she radiated an otherworldly grace that made the squalid chamber feel suddenly sacred. Zephyra of the Solari, the auctioneer continued, found drifting in the Nexus Nebula after the purge of Luminara Prime, completely docile with the neural inhibitor active, but capable of light manipulation when unrestricted, perfect for private collections or exotic entertainment. Nyx's hands clenched into fists. He knew about Luminara Prime. Everyone did. The hegemony had glassed the planet, claiming the Solari posed a threat to galactic stability. Apparently they'd missed one. Bidding starts at 50,000 credits, the auctioneer announced. Hands shot up around the room. Nyx watched in horrified fascination as the price climbed. 60,000, 75, 100,000. The buyers saw only profit and twisted pleasure. None of them saw the being who stood before them, the last guardian of an extinct civilization. At 150,000 credits, only two bidders remained, a hegemony official with dead eyes and a crime boss known for his collection of unique specimens. Now Nyx's military training kicked in, calculating odds and outcomes. Both buyers would ensure Zephora never saw freedom again, going once at 1-60... The auctioneer called. Time slowed. Nyx thought of his empty cargo hold, his dwindling resources, his sensible plan to stay uninvolved. Then he looked at Zephyra again. For just a moment, her luminous gaze met his across the crowded chamber. There was no plea in her eyes, only quiet dignity and acceptance of whatever fate awaited. That look shattered something inside him. 100,000, Nyx called out, his voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd like a plasma blade. The chamber fell silent. Every head turned toward him, and Nyx felt the weight of a dozen dangerous stares. The crime boss smiled coldly, but didn't counter. The hegemony official's face remained impassive as he shook his head slightly. Sold to the human in the back, the auctioneer declared with evident satisfaction. Payment is due immediately. As credits transferred from his account, nearly everything he had left, Nyx wondered if he'd just bought Zephyra's freedom or simply changed the identity of her captor. Either way, there was no turning back now. The silence aboard the Phantom's Edge stretched like a void between stars. Zephora sat in the cargo bay's corner, as far from Nyx as the ship's confines allowed. The neural inhibitor collar remained around her neck. He hadn't dared remove it. Yet, unsure if she'd attack him or simply flee into space itself. The freshers through that hatch, Nyx said awkwardly, setting down a tray of food. Clothes in the locker? They're probably too big, but... Her crystalline eyes tracked his movement like a predator watching prey. When he retreated to give her space, she approached the food cautiously, sniffing it before taking tentative bites. Everything about her movement screamed survival instincts honed by suffering. "I'm not going to hurt you," Nyx said softly. "I know you don't believe that yet, but it's true." Zephyr's voice, when it finally came, was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Humans say many things. Her actions tell different stories. The navigation console chimed urgently from the bridge. Nyx cursed under his breath. Proximity alarms meant trouble. Through the viewports, 3 ships emerged from the asteroid field's shadow, bearing the crimson markings of the Scarlet Tide pirates. His transmission array crackled to life. "Unknown vessel, prepare to be boarded. Surrender your cargo and passengers, and your death will be quick." Nyx's blood ran cold. Pirates had a special appetite for exotic slaves. Zephora would fetch an even higher price on the black market after what happened at Cathara. He sealed the blast doors between sections and grabbed his plasma rifle. "Stay hidden," he called to Zephora. But she was already moving. The first boarding pod clamped onto their hull with a metallic screech. Nyx positioned himself at the airlock, weapon ready. But as the pirates cut through, something extraordinary happened behind him. The neural inhibitor sparked and died. Light erupted from Zephyra's skin like a miniature sun. Her crystalline growths blazed with stored starlight, and suddenly, she wasn't a victim anymore. She was a force of nature. The boarding party burst through just as she raised her hands. Coherent light lanced from her fingertips. Not quite lasers, but something far more precise. Pirates screamed as their weapons overheated and their armor systems failed. One tried to shoot her, but she bent the light around herself, becoming nearly invisible while redirecting his shots back at his companions. Nyx stared in amazement. The hegemony hadn't destroyed the Solari because they were weak. They'd destroyed them because they were magnificent. Working together without words, they repelled all 3 boarding parties. Zephyra's light powers complemented Nyx's tactical training perfectly. When the pirates finally retreated, both were breathing hard, but uninjured. "Thank you," Zephora said quietly, examining the burned-out collar. "For removing my chains, even. If you didn't know you were doing it," Nyx smiled cautiously. "So... partners?" For the first time, her expression softened slightly. "Perhaps, but I choose to stay human. Remember that, Nyx," he corrected. "My name is Nyx." "Zephora," she replied, and something like trust flickered in her starlight eyes. 3 systems away from Cathara, Captain Thane Koros studied the holographic display aboard his flagship, the Apex Predator. The scarred veteran had built his fortune collecting rare specimens for the galaxy's elite, but the Solari represented his greatest prize yet. "Sir," reported his lieutenant, a cybernetically enhanced woman named Vex, "our contacts confirm the sale on Cathara. 1 survivor purchased by an unknown human." Thane's artificial eye whirred as it focused on the data. Nyx Valerian. Former Terran Alliance Special Forces, dishonorably discharged for insubordination. Currently operating as a freelance smuggler? He smiled coldly. "Track him. I want that Solari alive." Meanwhile, aboard the Phantom's Edge, Nyx was learning that traveling with Zephora meant constantly discovering new wonders. She could see electromagnetic spectrums invisible to human eyes, navigate by stellar positioning with uncanny accuracy, and somehow sense hyperspace currents days before they reached them. "Your people were explorers," he observed, as she guided them through a treacherous nebula that would have taken him hours to navigate safely. "We were many things," Zephora replied, her voice distant with memory. "Scholars, artists, guardians. We believed knowledge was meant to be shared. Light was meant to illuminate dark places." Her expression darkened. "The hegemony called us naive. Idealists. Perhaps they were right. They'd been sharing more personal stories during the long hyperspace jumps." Nyx told her about his homeworld, a farming colony destroyed by corporate raiders, while he was off fighting the hegemony's wars. She spoke of Luminara Prime's crystal cities, where her people lived in harmony with their planet's natural light cycles. "I dream of it sometimes," she admitted one evening, as they watched a binary star system dance in the distance. "But the dreams feel ... different now, like memories that aren't quite mine." "What do you mean?" Zephora touched her temple crystals. Thoughtfully, my people stored memories in crystalline matrices. Genetic memories passed down through generations. Since the neural inhibitor burned out, I've been remembering things I never learned, places I never saw. Nyx felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's recycled air. What kind of places? Safe places. Hidden places. Her eyes brightened. With an inner fire, places where my people might have survived. Before Nyx could respond, their sensor array screamed warnings. A massive dreadnought dropped out of hyperspace directly ahead, weapons already charging. The communication array, activated without their input. This is Captain Thane Koros of the Apex Predator. You have something that belongs to me. Nyx's blood turned to ice. Koros was legendary in the worst possible way. A hunter who never gave up once he'd marked his prey. On the tactical display, smaller ships began emerging from the dreadnoughts. Launch bays. Zephora, Nyx said urgently, those memories of safe places, how clear are they? She closed her eyes, concentrating. When she opened them again, they blazed with determination. Clear enough. We'll need to reach the Veil Nebula. Nyx engaged the engines, pushing them toward maximum velocity. Then that's where we're going. Right. Then Chorus's fleet gave chase, and the real hunt began. The Veil Nebula writhed like a living thing, its ionized gases creating a maze of deadly radiation storms and gravitational anomalies. Most ships avoided it entirely, but Zephora guided them deeper with growing confidence, following memories. That belonged to ancestors she'd never met. There, she whispered, pointing to what looked like empty space. The sanctuary of First Light. Nyx saw nothing but swirling plasma clouds until Zephora raised her hands. Light poured from her crystalline growths, and suddenly the nebula responded. Hidden structures materialized as if made of solidified starlight, an entire station that existed somehow between dimensions, visible only to Solari perception as they docked. An ancient voice echoed through their communication systems. I am Elder Meridian, guardian of this place. You carry the light of our people, child. Enter and reclaim what was taken. The station's interior defied physics. Corridors seemed to bend light itself, creating impossible geometries that hurt. To look at directly, at the center, they found Meridian, not a living being, but a crystalline AI construct that pulsed with the stored consciousness of 1,000 Solari elders. The last daughter returns, Meridian intoned, its voice harmonizing with itself in otherworldly chords. But darkness follows in your wake. Through the station's sensors, they watched Chorus's fleet emerge from the nebula's outer edge. The captain had followed them despite the dangers, his ship's hulls scarred by radiation, but still functional. He wants to capture me, Zephora said. Use me to breed a new generation of Solari slaves. Worse, Meridian replied. He seeks the Genesis Matrix, our people's method of restoration. With it, he could create armies of light wielders, bound to his will. Nyx felt sick. Can you defend this place? The sanctuary's weapons have slept for centuries, Meridian admitted. But you, child of light, you carry within you the power to awaken them. The choice is yours. Remain hidden and safe, or risk everything to stop those who would exploit our gifts. Zephora looked at Nyx, and he saw his own determination reflected in her luminous eyes. We've come this far together, he said simply. She nodded and approached the central console. As her hands touched the crystalline interface, the entire station began to sing. Light cascaded through conduits like liquid starfire, and dormant systems that had waited eons for this moment finally awakened. Chorus's voice boomed through their communicators. Surrender the Solari, and I'll allow you to leave with your lives. Counteroffer, Nyx replied, taking the weapons console as Zephora integrated with the station's systems. Leave now, and we won't demonstrate why the hegemony was so afraid of her people. Chorus's laughter was cold as void. One girl and one washed-up soldier against my entire fleet? I like those odds. The first salvo from his ships struck the sanctuaries, shields causing barely a ripple. Then Zephora opened her eyes, and they blazed like newborn stars. "Let me show you what the Solari really were," she said. Light erupted from the station in impossible formations, not mere energy beams, but controlled stellar phenomena. Chorus's ships found their weapons turning against each other as light bent around them. Its flagship's armor began to melt as concentrated starfire focused on its hull, but the effort was taking its toll. Blood ran from Zephyra's nose as she channeled power meant for dozens of her people. Nyx grabbed her hand, lending what strength he could. Together, they held the line until Koros finally retreated, his fleet battered and broken. In the aftermath, as Zephyra collapsed from exhaustion, Meridian spoke softly. "The Genesis Matrix is yours now, last daughter. Use it wisely." 6 months later, Nyx stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, watching ships arrive from across the galaxy. Word had spread quietly through refugee networks and underground channels. The Solari had returned, and they offered sanctuary to all who needed it. The station orbited a hidden world in the sanctuary system, terraformed using ancient Solari biotechnology. Below, crystalline cities grew like living things, their spires reaching toward the stars. And throughout it all, figures of living light moved with purpose and joy. Zephyra had used the Genesis Matrix carefully, creating new Solari from willing volunteers of compatible species. Each transformation was different. Some developed her light manipulation abilities. Others gained enhanced empathy or technological intuition. All of them chose to be here. "The Galactic Council is demanding access to our technology," Zephyra said, joining him at the viewport. She wore robes that shimmered with captured starlight, but her expression was troubled. "And the hegemony?" Nyx asked. "Officially, they deny we exist. Unofficially, ... She gestured to the defense platforms surrounding their world. "They're building up forces in nearby systems." Nyx nodded grimly. They'd known this peace was temporary. The galaxy's powers would never allow the Solari to remain independent forever. "We could leave," he suggested quietly. "Take a ship. Explore the unknown regions. Just the two of us." Zephyra smiled, but shook her head. "My people need me here." Besides, she touched his hand, her skin warm with inner light. "This is bigger than just us now." She was right. Haven Station housed not just new Solari, but thousands of refugees from dozens of species. They'd built something unprecedented, a truly free society where beings could develop their potential without exploitation or oppression. "Incoming transmission," announced the communication system. "Fleet Admiral Reginald Cross of the Terran Alliance." Nyx straightened. Cross was old-school military, honorable, but bound by politics and protocol. On the main screen, the Admiral's weathered face appeared, his expression neutral. "Miss Dawnweaver, Mr. Valerian, I'm here to offer Alliance protection in exchange for a mutual defense treaty." "At what cost?" Zephyra asked cautiously. "Technology sharing, military cooperation, standard diplomatic protocols?" Cross paused. "The alternative is facing the next hegemony assault alone." Nyx and Zephyra exchanged glances. They'd discussed this possibility many times, weighing freedom against survival. "We'll need guarantees," Zephyra said finally. "Our people's autonomy remains absolute. Our technology stays under our control. And any Alliance personnel stationed here follow our laws, not yours." Cross smiled slightly. "Acceptable." "The galaxy is changing, Ms. Dawnweaver. Maybe it's time for something better than the old ways." As negotiations continued, Nyx reflected on how far they'd come. He'd entered that auction to gather intelligence and left with a partner who'd changed his entire worldview. Zephyra had transformed from a broken slave into the leader of a new civilization. Together, they'd built something worth protecting. Later that evening, as binary stars set over their new world, Zephyra leaned against Nyx on their private balcony. Below them, Solari children played in gardens of living crystal, while their parents discussed philosophy and engineering with equal passion. "Do you think we'll survive what's coming?" she asked softly. Nyx considered the question seriously. The hegemony wouldn't give up easily, and there were others who coveted their power. But looking at what they'd built, at the hope in the faces below, he felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Certainty. We'll more than survive, he said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. We'll show the galaxy what's possible when beings are free to become what they're meant to be. Zephyrus crystals pulsed with gentle light, and for a moment their entire world seemed to glow with promise. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they always had, together as equals, as partners in the endless dance of starlight and shadow. The last Solari had become the first of something entirely new, and the galaxy would never be the same.